Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series where I take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. This video will be reviewing the bestiary 12 Christmas Sleighs, designed by Lucas Anderson, with Bum Lee, Daniel King, Jack Weighill, Jonathan Swadley, Sharkside, Vivian, Vanderkolk, and Aaryan Balu for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. This review has been sponsored by the publisher, and a review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my videos, consider using my affiliate links for your online shopping, supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. On the first day of Christmas, my true love gave to me a delightfully themed bestiary. This is 12 different monsters. All of them are holiday themed. We've got ferocious Christmas trees, the demonic Krampus, the heroic Nutcracker Prince, the celestial-powered radiant Reindeer, all very, very cute, fun ideas. What really sells this for me, however, is actually the artwork. I do appreciate that these are funny ideas, but it strides a good line between being a funny concept with a lot of jokes. You know, there's plenty of puns and gags even written into the stat blocks, but they're also serious stat blocks. Like they do look like they're, you know, decently well balanced. There's a wide range of creatures from kind of low ranking minion style, you know, CR half, all the way up to Santa Claus himself, who is CR 18, I think, and has a ton of power. So it's a funny idea, but it's not just a gag. It actually does have legitimately fun and what look like stat blocks that you could use. But more than anything, really, really awesome artwork. Every single monster in here has original art that looks awesome and really sells this whole product together. And because there's only 12 total creatures in here, I can kind of do a little bit more of an in-depth analysis than what I can usually do when it comes to monster manual type compilation. So the Electrum Dragon is a good-natured kind of cross between a silver and gold. Get it? Silver and gold. I'm going to be singing a lot during this whole thing, by the way, because I love my Christmas music. It comes in all the different dragon size stat blocks. You've got the Winter Breath, the joyful presence that you can exude, which causes everyone to be charmed. You've got Hearth Breath, which can, I believe, heal people. It's a good-natured dragon. And all of these creatures have multiple adventure hooks. In other words, ways that you would actually introduce these creatures in various adventures, or even just to use as a one-shot. And that's something I always want to see in any kind of product that's just giving me monsters, is a way to actually use those monsters and give me some fun ideas to build off of. In this case, it's more than just a sentence. As you can see, they're actually paragraphs of information. And some of them do some pretty good twists. Some of them are pretty normal. I'll go over some of my favorites as we reach them. The Gilded Tern is probably my overall favorite monster of this entire group. First of all, I think the most ubiquitous image you could think of for a non-religiously affiliated Christmas celebration would be the Christmas tree. And turning that into a terrifying monster is a fantastic idea. It's been warped by the fact that it's got all these ornaments, and it's all about consumption. It has really fun ideas that frankly make it way more interesting and cool than a normal treant, which is impressive. I mean, the one thing I don't understand is that, and I looked it up, a normal treant is a CR 9 and is not nearly as powerful or interesting as this one, which is only a CR 7. So there's a little bit of confusion on where we got the actual challenge rating from. But in this case, you've got multi-attack. When you bite people, you actually essentially the mechanics are there for creatures that like swallow you whole, but in this case you're just being engulfed by a Christmas tree. You can also grab people with all of its snarling branches, and whenever somebody dies, they can hang them. The tree like hangs them as an ornament, so it's a really dark twist. And a lot of this is kind of, not all of them are like dark versions of these, you know, holiday things, but this is an example of one that is that, and I think works very, very well. It does two really cool trait concepts. One of them is when you take fire damage, which as a tree, any smart player is going to try to deal fire damage to it. that actually lights its ornaments on fire, and it can take its ornaments that are now on fire and hurl them at enemies and have them take fire damage. That's a really fun twist. And the other one is that when the creature actually dies, this is called Timber, it can fall down and collapse any nearby creatures in a 15-foot line. They must make a dex saving throw or take damage, which is something that's really a fun idea, because a lot of times, and I've been in there, when you're in combat and you're fighting a giant creature, you kind of joke about how this creature is about to fall over and people have to scramble out of the way, and this actually has rules built into the stat block for that, which is really fun. And of course the D20 table of random trinkets, which are the various ornaments attached to the creature. Absolutely fantastic. I love this creature. I love this idea. Even if you could take away the whole ornament thing and just make this into a very legitimately more powerful, interesting treant, which is, I think, saying something when you don't even necessarily need the jokey aspect of it to see that this is a legitimately good stat block. Optional legendary actions on a lot of these creatures to make them more powerful if you want to is always good. The Grumblers, of course, are classic Grinch. This one has a lot of the best jokes, I think, built into the stat block. Stink, Stank, Stunk is, of course, the Grumbler exuding a aura of stinkiness, I guess, and everybody has to make a con saving throw or be poisoned. Noise, Noise, Noise. The Grumbler has disadvantage on saving throws against thunder damage and has vulnerability against thunder. Very, very funny if your players are trying to meta knowledge any of the creature stat blocks that this bestiary delights in that. It says, like, yes, absolutely, we want you to kind of analyze where these creatures are from, what their normal stats would be, and then you can run from there and kind of determine its strengths and weaknesses and abilities just based on, where they're from. His shoes were just too tight. You can take a bonus action to dash, disengage, or hide. Really interesting as a reaction, Steal Your Goodwill. As a reaction to being attacked, he can force someone to make a charisma saving throw, or they gain exhaustion. That is very, very powerful for using as a reaction move for sure. Jackie Frost is a twist on the Fire and Frost version. I thought these were supposed to be two different characters. I'm not up on my Christmas myths, I guess, in terms of being both a Fire and Frost Fae shape changer. Krampus, I did hear about Krampus, but I had to look it up to make sure what the hell this is all about, because I never actually watched any of the fiction that has been produced. But this is the kind of anti-Santa Claus demon that, instead of rewarding nice children, it kind of steals and kidnaps naughty children. And this one, I think, has some of the more interesting adventure hooks, which is you could basically either save a child from the Krampus. The parents have hired you to save their missing child. You can try and just track down a Krampus that is terrorizing a local town, or you could help the Krampus by teaching a lesson to some naughty, spoiled brat noble children if you wanted to team up with the Krampus. And in fact, there's a later, I think it's a adventure hook for Santa Claus, where you're teaming up with Krampus again to take on a Santa Claus who has kind of overstepped his bounds, I guess, and gotten a little too megalomaniac. So that's a really fun way of using the same creature, but in very wildly different formats and uses. The Merry Lude is one that I had to look up completely. I had no idea. And obviously there are some pretty, recognizable characters and creatures to pull from. This is not one of them for me, at least. Apparently it's a English, I think maybe even Welsh specifically, some kind of like parade thing. It's based on a wassailing, which is where players just kind of go around singing, as far as I'm people go around singing and carols and things. And for some reason it involves a white sheet and a horse skull, which is one of the most terrifying things I can picture, is the skull of a freaking horse. I'm not familiar with this creature at all, but it's interesting that it can be apparently tied into a holiday theme, and perhaps wouldn't be as recognizable for your players if you wanted to use something like this. Nutcracker Prince, look at this artwork. It's just so adorable. I love it. Has, of course, some really fun stories that are pulled directly from the Nutcracker. One of them is that the girl is like a witch and she has the power to bring things to life. The other one is basically just play through the Nutcracker, where she's gone missing, as is the Nutcracker, and you have to kind of, hopefully go into their world. In fact, I would love to have a D&D adventure that was just straight up the Nutcracker. I think that would actually translate into D&D very well. Maybe not quite as a one-shot, because there's a lot going on there, although you might be able to condense it there, but you could do a whole product on just the Nutcracker, so I'm glad we got at least some here. I would have liked to see the mouse, the Rat King, is that the name? The villain? Which is just a giant, because everybody is shrunken, that's what I can recall, and it's the In fact, there's a bunch of characters. You could do the Sugar Plum Fairy. There's a whole series you could do from just the Nutcracker, but very delightful there. Radiant Reindeer is, of course, a joke on Rudolph. In this case, it's Emery, the emerald-nosed reindeer. Emery is a celestial reindeer with some radiant powers, but also kind of a little chaotic and unpredictable. And the adventure hooks include, like, you just need the sphere, and it happens to be attached to this celestial reindeer, which is kind of a moral complication. One of them is, of course, you have to find a guide. Emery with his nose so bright, one of the few creatures that can guide you to your destination. One of them is you see Emery just plummeting to the ground like a comet, and you have to go investigate, like, what the hell happened there. And the other one is Santa has actually given you the task to bring Emery under control, because he's kind of a wild reindeer with a lot of unpredictable powers. One of them is dashing through the snow, where as an action it can just charge through everybody, knocking them out of the way with strength or dex saves. And for a legendary action, nose so bright, it can cause its emerald nose, of course, to blind people around them. You know, these are obvious abilities, but it does feel like, at least just glancing through, these creatures are decently, you know, well balanced and have fun and interesting ability. Like nosedive, if it's flying and flies straight in, it can do, you know, damage as it tackles into people. There's definitely a leaning towards the higher end of creatures. So these creatures are meant to be more like centerpieces of an adventure, rather than like a bunch of, you know, minions that you would face, for example. Which kind of makes sense, because these are all, you know, famous characters and not necessarily just random one-off monsters for the most part. Including Santa Claus himself, who is a 19th level spellcaster with 9th level spells, mostly cleric spells, but with a few kind of like Cone of Cold and that kind of thing. Wielding a candy cane, which that might be just a unique quality of this version of Santa Claus. Oddly enough, you know, a lot of them are kind of jokey versions, slightly not, you know, the Grumble and all those. Santa Claus is just Santa Claus. Just straight up, it's the dude. And I love that his main ability is a sack of wonders, where he can pull out a toy. I really would have liked to see this expanded to be a little bit more, though. I would have liked a table of like toys he could pull out. Instead, it just piggybacks on top of the bag of tricks, which is that magic bag where you can pull out random animals and as summoned creatures. And you can do the same thing here, but just using toys, and they appear as constructs. And I believe he can do that as a legendary action as well. And he's got his candy cane. He can, of course, shrink down to fit into like keyholes and chimneys and things. And as a legendary action, you can eat milk and cookies to regain 8d8 plus 4 hit points. Very fun there. Good old Santa Claus. The Snowman at Arms is I think, one of the few creatures. There's this one and one at the end, which is a lower level minion type creature. And this is just freaking hilarious. I love this picture of a very angry snowman wielding very real weapons. And this is kind of an example of how a lot of these creatures are, you know, the legit holiday thing, but also in a D&D world, which is all combat based. So they're all kind of, you know, violent and ready to attack. It just doesn't have anything really impressive in its stat block, other than the fact that it can throw snowballs, which is pretty fun, which I think is pretty much the same thing as a cold ray in terms of slowing people down. And it's just got fun little adventure hooks, where it kind of makes a nod to the actual Frosty the Snowman legend of the wizard with the magic hat and all that, which is really fun. White Elephant is probably one of the most clever ones in here, because I think there are a lot of people that don't even know what White Elephant is, which typically is used in like an office setting where people bring a whole bunch of just random ass gifts, and then they draw from a hat in terms of who gets to, and you put all the gifts in like one big pile, and they weren't made for any one person, which is why they're usually just generic gifts of whatever. And you draw from a hat, and you get a number, and at least is how we've done it at the ones I've been involved in. And you get the number, and then you get to pick out a gift, and then other people get to then either take a random gift or your gift. And if they take your gift, then you can get another random gift. So it's a whole big, do you want behind the door number 1 or door number 2, whatever. And it usually ends up being kind of a fun social exercise, not necessarily very satisfying from a gift-giving standpoint, because obviously nobody's really getting, anything that they really necessarily wanted. But the White Elephant does a really fun way of translating that gift-swapping concept with the initiative roll, which is whenever you roll initiative with this creature, which is a good aligned creature, so I'm not sure when you'd be fighting it, but anyway, I don't know, maybe you interrupted it and it has to fight you. it can swap initiative with anybody else, but then that person can also swap their initiative with somebody else, as long as it wasn't the first one, as long as they haven't swapped initiative already. So you can just go down the line, everybody be switching initiatives till you get down to like the last two, I guess. That's a really fun idea and a really funny way of translating the gift swapping idea. And then it can also literally, as a reaction, just steal buffs. If you were about to cast a healing spell or any kind of beneficial buff, it can actually take that and steal it, or just give it to somebody. It says it can change the target of the spell to another creature within 60 feet of itself. It doesn't necessarily say that it can actually steal it itself. So maybe the idea is it just kind of shuffles things around in a bit random, but maybe it can show up during other enemies and even buff them, or just buff the wrong person. Would be kind of funny too. So I just think that's a really clever way of translating that actual idea, and the fact that the designers even thought of doing a white elephant, which I don't know why it's called that, but that is what the gift exchange thing is called, into an actual creature that's literally an elephant that has those abilities. That's very, very clever. Aladd is a... Oh, I thought this was a small one. It's actually a CR5. Gosh, I thought this was one of the small ones. Okay, this is one I was thinking of, but it's a CR5. That's not necessarily minion stride size. Is basically what creatures that little kids have been transformed into like super naughty creatures, and they have a fun little variant where you can use different versions of them, kind of like goblins with their abilities, but I was actually surprised that it's a little bit higher than I thought. The challenge rating thing is the only thing that I'm a little bit not certain on. Like, all the abilities seem really fun and interesting. You know, it pulls a lot of stuff from obviously the monster manual and how those, like, pack tactics and those things. But there's enough in here, there's enough unique abilities that make these creatures stand out, and obviously the awesome artwork. The only thing I'm a little bit concerned about is the actual challenge rating. As I mentioned with the Treant, the fact that the Treant listed in here, the Gilded one, is a lower CR rating despite having what I think way better abilities. It was the only thing I was a little bit concerned about. And not really that concerning. The stat blocks themselves seem well balanced. I just don't know if that translates to the right challenge rating, which is just how, you know, DMs use at a glance to determine what kind of creature is going to throw at my players. I would have maybe liked a little table that included, you know, here's the creatures by CR rating or something. But again, there's only 12 here, so that's not super concerning that we get that. But I think this is a really fun product. It does a really great job, as I mentioned, of towing the line between having a funny concept and a lot of fun with the different, you know, references and things even in the stat block. But the stat blocks themselves are still legitimately fun and, you know, professionally designed and seem pretty serious to where you could use them in a game. And you could even switch things around and not even have the holiday thing be a thing and just use those stat blocks in a lot of these creatures, which I think is very, very impressive. Let's go over my pros and cons for the 12 Christmas. I always want to say 12 sleighs of Christmas. It's 12 Christmas sleighs. Pros, plenty of jokes and puns with balanced stat blocks. As I mentioned, I think it does a really good balance of that. Pros, delightful original artwork for each monster. This really, really helps sells it for me. It would have been nice to even get token art for it, but I know not everybody uses the virtual tabletop thing. But this art, the fact that we get original design art for every single creature is a huge thumbs up, and I do appreciate that. And pro, multiple adventure hooks for each entry, which is something I also love to see from any kind of monster bestiary. 3 to 4 for every single creature, and they're more than just a single sentence. They're usually a couple sentences, and it's, you know, I'm not expecting a huge big, you know, mini adventure or anything, although that'd be great, but just, you know, give me enough to give me some ideas about how to use these creatures. Although in this case, most folks are already fairly familiar with most of these creatures. You could probably already build up some thoughts in your head. One thing I do want to mention that comes as a bonus is the product includes some holiday gift cards, which I think would be just a really fun way of inviting your players to a holiday one-shot. Do you want to find a snowman is definitely my favorite. It doesn't have to be a snowman. That's really, really good. Just a funny addition. I'm glad it's there. It's just a cute little add-on that definitely takes pride in its artwork, and it should take pride in its artwork because the art is very, very good. Cons, really none. Like, I have some nitpicky stuff about maybe some challenge rating here and there, but honestly, that's so nitpicky, and it would be different if the stat blocks themselves seemed wildly imbalanced, but I didn't really notice anything on my at a glance. Otherwise, everything is very, very well designed. I love the look of it. I love the art. I love the creature designs, all the inclusions, the variety of everything. Just all of that works very well for me. Final verdict, the holiday-themed creatures in 12 Christmas sleighs are vibrant, hilarious, and compelling providing ample inspiration for a holiday-themed adventure. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. And you can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. Thank you.